So thanks for inviting me for this session. I really appreciate it. So I'm a long timer in this industry, plus 40 years, I have to admit. I've been working in the network equipment vendor community for about 6-7 years in the 80s. I've been in the CSP community for about 10 years, Convic in Sweden and Smarton in Hong Kong. Then started a consulting firm called Northspring and run that for 20 years. Sold that to Accenture, coming out of Accenture late last year. And then now, as of 1st of February, become a part-time senior advisor to Analysis Mason, alongside my own small little business called Northspring. So that's sort of my background in the industry.
Yes, look, a long history there. Well, not that I have any room to talk, but okay, Bengt. So we're going to explore whether AI in 5G networks is a match made in heaven. And I guess what was at the back of my mind when I was thinking about this is that many think that 5G has failed spectacularly to deliver new services and extra revenues that telecoms were banking on, really. So can AI save the day, or is that not a good way of looking at things?
Well, I think, first of all, I don't think 5G is sort of a failure of any kind. It's just the expectations that were set that were too high. Because if you looked at it already in the 4G time, we improved capacity, we increased throughput, we lowered latency, and that didn't really result in any revenue growth for the CSPs. So when you do the same trick with 5G, even more capacity, even higher data speed, even lower latency, I don't think it was reasonable to expect that revenues should grow. So from my perspective, I'm not surprised at all that we are where we are. Then to your question, can AI save the day? And I think the simple answer is not really, but it's still super important. I think any and all player in the industry need to embrace AI. I think the reason why, again, we set high expectations of AI is because of the arrival of generative AI in 2023. It was pushed by the big hyperscalers. It's their technology, it's their IPRs. And since they invested so much money in this, they have pushed it to the market, and we have all got excited. So I think it's important, but it's not a miracle cure for the industry.
Okay, so do we think the hype machine needs to be fueled to kind of justify that immense investment? And it had a little bit of a bump earlier this week due to DeepSeek
Yes.
from China, which I thought was rather entertaining, actually. Okay, so do you think that a lot of the hype is being driven by the levels of investment, and we need to think a bit more clearly?
I think there are two sides of it. I think generative AI is a super interesting technology breakthrough, and it had a huge impact for any and all industry. So there's no doubt about that. And one of the things about generative AI is how easy it has been to play around with. So anybody can use the app and get very interesting results just from keying in the questions yourself. So that sort of led to this optimism. But in reality, it just like any technology invention, it takes time to integrate and implement to companies, and it will have a big impact, but it will take some time. And I think to this point, which is sort of a very important part of this equation, is that the companies behind this, the hyperscalers, many of them did hardly exist 20 years ago. So these are the giants of the industry. They are far bigger than any telecom vendor. They are far bigger than any operator, at least the top 7 of them in revenue, in sales, in R&D. So we are very much inspired by these companies. Part of their success, or an integral part of their success, is that they are data-driven companies.
Yeah.
So they, right from the outset, when they launched their business, they had a data strategy. They had an architecture in place that was based on that we should be rich and famous by monetizing data. That was their starting point. And that's a huge inspiration for any company, not only the telecom sector, any company. And all companies that I work with and talk with, they like to be data-driven, just like the big techcos. It's just that they started from a blank sheet of paper 20, 25, 30 years ago. Telcos in our industry, the starting point is not the blank sheet of paper, it's legacy. It's the old IT system, it's the upgrading of the networks, it's front end, built on systems. Data reside in many, many different places, and therefore the journey to become data-driven is much longer for a telco player than it has been for the big hyperscalers, although they are inspiration from all of us.
Okay, so there seems to be a lot of tinkering in a lot of places, I would say, in telecoms at the moment, while we try to get a grip to where it can be used to best effect rather than a master plan. What do you think about that approach? And maybe actually the one area where there is a master plan is, I do think a lot of telcos are trying to ensure that that AI is applied in a safe and ethical way. But that aside, I would say there's no grand plan about how they're approaching it, really.
I think it's you can say, coming back to the previous points, there have been a lot of efforts across the whole industry, network equipment vendors, CSPs, to quickly adopt AI and generative AI, particularly since 2023. If you look at already 10, 15 years ago, CSPs began to employ or appoint chief digital officer as part of their leadership team. And that was a response of, so we have to digitalize our business. So it's something that's been going on for many, many years. And Gen AI is just fueling that, you can say. But what we also have learned, because of the legacy situation for a CSP, and I think the bigger you are, the more challenging that situation is. The journey to become a digital company or a data-driven company and leverage AI is very, very complicated. It's something that happens step by step, year by year. It's super important, but we have to be very patient with how long time it will take to fully benefit and really come closer of looking at or really acting and behaving like a data-driven company. Because if you think about it, just take a small example here. If you are a customer, a subscriber to any CSP, it doesn't matter if it's in the UK or Sweden, and you for some reason need to call customer care, most of the times you say, am I now connected to a data-driven company? No, you don't get that feeling, right? What's happening is that you, after calling the number, you will be number 50, 60, 70, or 80 in the queue. And you will be repeatedly hear about marketing and all the great things about them, continuous replaying for you while you're waiting to get through to your customer care representative. And you are asked to identify yourself by keying in some sort of identification number. And still, when you get connected through, you have to repeat who you are. And if you're talking to the wrong person, connected to another person, you have to repeat your case, your identification. And So that's sort of, you know, in reality, the state of the industry. But it's also why, you know, customer care is such a great potential for using AI and data to be better than they are today.
Okay, so although we need an overall plan, it needs to be implemented and maybe developed and thought about step by step. I think one of the difficulties for telcos is that it takes a long time to do this stuff because of the complexity of what they're dealing with. And at the same time, we're seeing quite a lot of changes in the industry. You know, I mean, when you have a grand plan, it has to be adaptable to changing circumstances. You cannot decide to stick to it no matter what else happens, because that would just be foolish and possibly very expensive. So this holistic approach, can you talk to me about it, and what you think they need to do, what steps they need to take?
Yes, and that's a super important aspect of this. I think I worked quite a bit on these topics in Accenture, including going through some super good training courses they offered. And one of the things I learned was that when you like to be a data-driven company, you know, the starting point for such a venture is to ask yourself, what business problem do I have, and what business problems do I like to fix to become offering a better service or becoming more efficient than I am today? And when you have that list of things that are your business problem, then you should ask yourself, if you like to become a data-driven company, what data do I need to have to solve those business problems? And that's actually, it's not a quick fix you do over one day. It's actually thorough investigation and analysis and so forth. So that would point you to, this is the kind of data sources I would need to have for fixing my business problems. When you know that, you have to build a sort of IT architecture that supports you to have access to data. So you really can efficiently use it to solve your data problem or your business problems. So that sort of journey, say what business problem you like to solve, what data do I need, and set the right architecture in place to get access to that data. That is sort of it's not rocket science I'm talking about, but it's something that is very fundamental to be successful. And when I look at how things are happening in the industry, I don't think many CSPs can say that I have really put that architecture in place. I have really started in that end. You are more starting with data and AI, recruiting data scientists on a sort of experimental journey, incrementally adding skills, and do it in pockets of the organization, but you very seldom see it.
So looking at what the technology can do rather than what you want to achieve. And I thought it was quite interesting when we spoke before, Bengt, you mentioned about the course you'd attended at the Kellogg School of Management recently. And I just thought it was a case of sort of stating the blindingly obvious, and yet we all know what we should do, and somehow we so often do something else, all of us personally and in our work habits. I wondered if you could just kind of talk us through the sort of 4 steps that were recommended there.
Well, again, I think it becomes challenging because the changes in organization, CSP or network equipment vendor, need to go through to genuinely become a data-driven company. That's so fundamental. It would, in reality, it would take the whole leadership team, who are not sort of data-trained people, not many of them at least, to really get super familiar, knowledgeable about how you run a data-driven business. And very few organizations can think they have that time. So to do it holistically is sort of a prerequisite being successful, but how you execute that in something that starts with company, people, and organizations that have different skills is a barrier. The starting point for a CSP is that they have data in so many different places. And to make that data available in a structured way so it can get accessed by the whole organization, not only sales and marketing, but HR, finance, operations, engineering, IT, and so forth, are very, very complicated programs. But it's what needs to be put in place for it to effectively work and genuinely become a data-driven company. So but I think as I talk here, I almost sound pessimistic, and I'm not actually. I think it makes absolutely sense for CSPs to pursue this. It's just that they have to set the right expectations themselves, and we have to have reasonable expectations on them on how quickly it happens. I don't expect my call to customer care and be number 50 in the queue to be fixed this year. But maybe 2028, 2029, I'm number 20 when I call. And I only need to say my identification once. That's sort of the journey and step-by-step improvement that you can expect.
So where does that leave us, Bengt, regarding all those services 5G is supposed to deliver as operators slowly roll out 5G SA and look to 5G advanced capabilities? And for instance, network slicing has been talked about for the last 8 years.
Yeah. Now it's called network slicing. First time I heard about service differentiation, when that was?
Oh, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago, possibly.
When I joined Ericsson in 1983.
There you go.
We talked about quality of service. We talked about, instead of only delivering the common voice service, fixed telephony that was available, we like to have differentiation and be able to charge differently for certain customers that have certain needs. So that's the first time I came across it. Then it's sort of been shadowing my career for more than 40 years in various shapes and forms until the most recent stage, where we are, as we heard from the previous speakers here, we are actively pursuing network slicing. And all of that, makes sense to me. I think we have this softwareization of the industry, and the whole purpose of having that journey is that it should be much easier, much shorter lead time to configure and deliver a service to a customer. So all that makes sense to me, but I think it's something that will take some time to put in place. When I talk to CSPs today and we discuss network slicing, I realize that what is sort of in the roadmap right now is to have some APIs available for your own B2B or consumer team, so they can, in the domestic local operation, leverage network API to short lead times and to have lower cost of building a service to a customer. But when you talk about the bigger picture of where this is available, you have millions of developers that are connected to Aduna or to other platform companies, and they, in their turn, they build and service, they request APIs from CSPs all over the world, and that is all happening automatically. That is more like a North Star for the industry. something that is further away. Right now, it's about making network APIs happen in your own operation and that your own business benefits from that.
So what was talked about by our panel is really not on the roadmap yet for most CSPs. It's somewhere beyond the roadmap. Is that what you're saying?
I think it was a very good panel with very, very competent people. They were super realistic in what they're saying. I really appreciated that. But they were all representatives of what are you working with when you are a representative of CSP and you work with network APIs. Well, you work with very real issues. You are supporting the Aduna venture and you try to decide on which API should be available. Same in TM Forum in GSMA and so forth. So I think I liked it because it didn't set unrealistic expectations. It talked about the real issues you are working with as a CSP when you pursue network slicing.
Okay, so one of the things I wonder, and not only to do with 5G and 5GSA and 5G Advanced, but the whole issue of legacy, because ever since I started working in telecoms, which isn't quite as long ago as you, but it's awful close, we've been talking about so 4 decades, we've been talking about getting rid of legacy. And the other problem with legacy, it seems to me, is that things become legacy a lot more quickly than they used to as well. And yet, you can't chuck something out after 3 or 4 years without having your money's worth out of it. And I'm just wondering, do you think, AI has a role there and helping to ensure that legacy and 5G sort of, help with maximizing their value?
Absolutely, 100%. There are aspects of first of all, as I said, in our conversation here, the objective is not in itself to use AI. The objective is to be a data-driven company. And their AI plays a very important role, but it's not in isolation. It means something. And if you take the arrival of generative AI, and I worked with this myself, with CSPs when I worked at Accenture, there are things that are sort of low-hanging fruits. You can take documentation that is available in binders on paper, and you can screen that and put that in a database and make documentation for operation and maintenance much easier available for your service staff. That saves money, lead times, and everything. So there are absolutely things that are happening. When I talk to network equipment vendors, they are super excited and making very good progress in using AI to shorter development time, code generation, automatic testing, building digital twins of products and test them before you do it live in a physical condition. So there are so many opportunities there that are promising. But again, my approach has always been, when I work in the CSP community, is that you must be better today than you were yesterday, but you have to be better tomorrow than you are today. Gradual, step-by-step improvement.
Bengt, thank you very much. And I'm collecting quotations from today. So I liked in the previous session, Peter's telco hyperscaler and Attilia's NAS becoming the core business of tomorrow. And from you, my favorite was the objective is not to use AI. And I think that's just perfect. Yes, the objective is to address issues, and AI is a possible tool. So I like that a lot, but the objective is not to use AI. It's rather
exactly.
It's the wrong end of the binoculars, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Important component, but not the strategy in itself.
Bengt, thank you so much. I look forward to speaking to you soon. And in the meantime,
thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you very much.